and also Islamic societies and the world at large. Today we are joined by two esteemed guests, Dr. Mourad Aly and Dr. Yasin Aktay, to comment on what has been claimed to be the most important election of 2023 by the Washington Post, the election in Turkey, in which Recep Tayyip Erdogan won by a substantial majority for a 5-year term. This election has many implications for the region and for the world at large. We are joined by first Dr. Mourad Aly. Dr. Mourad Aly is a well-known strategic consultant for political campaigns and political strategy and media relations. He has extensive experience in consulting organizations both in Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey. He has an MBA from France and also a number of diplomas from Columbia, Cambridge, and Cairo University. He has a doctorate also in business. Dr. Mourad has participated in many international training programs at Harvard, INSEAD, Columbia, London, and actively works in Turkey and as a consultant. He also is a consultant at Al Jazeera Media Network, Nielsen, and other political organizations. Alongside him, we have Dr. Yasin Aktay, who is a professor at Yildirim Beyazit University in Ankara. Before that, he was a professor at Seljuk University in Konya. He specializes in applied sociology. He's on a number of editorial boards for journals such as Milal wa Nahal and Reorient. He has also managed the Institute for Strategic Thinking based out of Ankara. After 2012, he joined the AK Party. He was the deputy chairman for foreign relations and the director of human rights, and also served as the official spokesperson for the party. Alongside his academic work and political work, he often appears on television and in newspapers, writing about issues concerning politics, the Middle East, and the AK Party. He has a regular column in Yeni Shafak, which is well read and received in Turkey. I welcome both of our esteemed guests, and I will begin by giving the floor to Dr. Mourad Aly for his opening comments and reflections on the Turkish election. Dr. Mourad Aly, the floor is yours.
Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, may peace and blessings be with Prophet Muhammad. Thank you so much for hosting me in this seminar, a webinar, and I am honored to join CIGA in this webinar alongside two very important figures, Dr. Yasin Aktay and Dr. Sami Al-Arian, and it is quite hard to speak in their presence, but I'm going to do my best to do well, and I'm here to learn more than to speak. In terms of the Turkish elections and what happened in that elections, first of all, when we talk about the Turkish elections, the all the focus was on the presidential elections, which were vital and quite pivotal and took much media momentum in media and took much of the focus. But in actuality, we were witnessing two parallel elections, parliamentary and presidential, and we must concentrate on this because it is quite essential, because those two elections affected one another quite significantly, and the strategy used by the AK party and by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was quite successful, while the opposition alliance known as the six-party table was different, and they focused only on the presidential elections. And the People's Alliance, headed by the AK party and the Recep Tayyip Erdogan, were successful in quite a stunning way, according to many predictions made, because they had set a good strategy on a parallel, balanced focus on both the parliamentary and presidential elections, which was one of the flaws in the focus of the opposition strategy. So before we go into any further details, it is important to highlight this important issue, which is that the AK party has used many of its ministers as nominees for the parliamentary elections, such as Mr. Aktay and Mr. Çavuşoğlu and others who were working quite strongly on the ground, while the opposition alliance was almost solely focused on the presidential elections. On the ground, the AK party was working in parallel by those in the People's Alliance in the parliamentary elections. At the same time, much pressure was put on the opposition because there was not enough focus on the figure of the presidential elections, because Kılıçdaroğlu was not the superstar in these elections. The lights were shared with, or the spotlight was shared with Meral Akşener, Akram İmamoğlu, and Ahmed Davutoğlu, and the others in the six-party table. And when the AK party managed to achieve this success in parliamentary elections, the mission of President Erdogan became much easier in convincing the Turkish voter, especially that the Turkish voters have a very terrible history with political alliances and unstable alliances. So it was normal that they would opt for President Erdogan and the alliance that already won the parliamentary elections. So this is a preliminary note, if you like. But as you know, there are several factors for elections to be successful, or the management of any elections to be successful. Those factors include the candidate and the alliance. So who is the candidate that we are presenting, how they are presented, and how their personality is perceived. And this is important not only in presidential but also in parliamentary elections, because at the end of the day, a voter is choosing between two people or two lists of candidates. In the six-party table, the selection of the candidate was not successful, be it in parliamentary or presidential elections. Of course, in presidential elections, it was quite obvious that Kılıçdaroğlu was quite old, was not charismatic, made many mistakes on air, and the perception of him was that he was a dictator who came along to the presidency of the CHP by a scandal of his predecessor, no specific political success. His personal record included no significant success, even when he managed the social agency, and President Erdogan played on this card. So in terms of presidential elections, the selection of the candidate was a big mistake. When Miral Akşener withdrew from the six-party table and then came back, when they were choosing the candidate, it was mainly because she did not accept or agree to having Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu be a candidate. She preferred Akram İmamoğlu or someone else. So one of the factors was the selection of the candidate. On the other hand, President Erdogan enjoyed popularity, is charismatic, and has a history of achievement, and enjoys some personal attributes such as presence. And he is quite smart in terms of his communication with the masses and his ability to address the masses in their own way and in their own language without a tint of superiority. Although, as a candidate, President Erdogan, with all due respect, he had sort of, so to speak, a flaw, or if you like, a disadvantage for young people, which is he had been in power for 21 years. So young people would tend to be inclined to choose change, or be inclined for change. So many people, young people would not have a problem with Erdogan himself as a person, but would like to see change. In addition, the presence of any person for 21 years in power would create enemies and flaws, or mistakes and rivalry, give rise to rivalries. So people would invoke those issues, and for example, his rivalry with Ahmed Davutoğlu. So as I mentioned, there was also the problem of the selection of candidates for parliamentary elections. We found Hulusi Akar, Süleyman Soylu, and other ministers who were moving around, attending and being present and active on the ground as candidates for the AK party. The other factor of success was the strategy, which is what is the message, the main message with which we go to elections. And here we find the alliance of the Halkar Alliance, or and the People's Alliance, and the AK Party were quite superior, as President Erdogan built his strategy on several pillars. One was the record, or the history of achievement, the achievements they have achieved over 21 years. They have changed Turkey, we have changed Istanbul, and they have used the comparison between the situation before 2002 and today, using videos and other media means and exhibitions and etc. in focusing on this change. The other pillar was to accentuate the national spirit. From the beginning, the motto was the century of Turkey, that we are a state that is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and this is going to be the Turkey century, and this was translated into actions on the ground. We had exhibitions such as Technofest, which was attended by around 2 million people, in addition to TOG, the Turkish car that came along, which was a dream for Turkish citizens for 50 years, in addition to the airplane carrier, where Turkish citizens were allowed to see and visit. So people were allowed to see firsthand those achievements to enhance their nationalist spirit and national spirit, in addition to Bayraktar bronze and also focusing on the opening of the nuclear power plant and other projects. So, in addition, this was very clear in their foreign policy. If we look at the body language of President Erdogan in his dialogues or interviews with the international media, such as his conversation with CNN International, for example, and how clear he was in his rejection to be a follower of Western policy and refusing to give in and be a satellite to them. So he has used those. His message was that we were protecting the independent, strong Turkey, while opposition, according to him, wanted to take Turkey back to the to be a satellite of Western states. So this national spirit accentuation was clear in terms of achievements, exhibitions, foreign policy, conversations, and messaging. This is the second pillar of his strategy. The third pillar of this campaign or this strategy was the values. And it is, I believe, one of the times I heard President Erdogan use religious and moral values and quotations and allusions most, focusing on the identity of Turkey and identifying their stance of homosexuality and other value and moral related issues. We have lost Dr. Mourad.
It seems like we have lost Dr. Mourad. Seems to be some technical difficulty. Dr. Mourad, can you hear me? Okay, I think we're back.
I'm sorry. It seems. Can you hear me now? Shall I continue where I stopped? Or
yes, I just wanted to let you know, as you conclude your remarks, that we have only a few more minutes left.
We talked about the history of achievements, the personality of the candidates, the accentuation of the national spirit, in addition to the value, the dimension of values, and using religious discourse and the reminding people of the Turkish identity. And one of the other pillars of this strategy utilized by President Erdogan was to focus on the weakness and the flaws of the opposition candidates. Since the beginning of elections, President Erdogan used a mold to and a label for the opposition candidate, saying bye Kemal, and he has framed him in the consciousness of the citizens in that sense, to make them feel how weak that candidate was. And the opposition actually helped and made this an easier task because of their flaws, and the President Erdogan and his campaign were smart enough to make use of those polls which were very clear in the second round of the elections, when some of the figures of the opposition attacked the citizens in the earthquake-stricken states and provinces because they voted for President Erdogan, and President Erdogan used this, and it echoed not only in earthquake-stricken areas but elsewhere as well, because it lost much popularity for the opposition, that is. Another pillar of this strategy was to target certain strata and providing them with services such as the teachers, the increase of salaries, the increase of minimum wage, and providing services and opening certain projects in certain places, including bridges and railways. So this targeting of specific groups, if you like, we cannot say that he has been using the powers of the state. He was establishing and starting genuine projects, tangible projects and services on the ground for the state, for the citizens, sorry. Although some Western media said that those elections were free but not fair. Why? Because they believe that President Erdogan has the capacity of the state and could open projects, etc. So, but I remind them all the time that although this is an advantage, it is also a disadvantage because he is held to account and he is responsible. So he would be held to account for any mistakes and for economic fallbacks, and he has to stand before the public for accountability. So while President Erdogan was held to account for his actions during his term in power, the other candidate did not have to stand as such. So they used the grassroots and the organizational structure of the AK party, which has improved much in this election, actually. Now, let's look at the strategy of his rival. The opposition committed many mistakes. The opposition and Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu.
Dr. Mourad, sorry for my interruption, but could you wrap up your comments in the next couple of minutes? So, for the sake of time, we will be returning with question and answers, so we can go into detail.
بإذن الله. إن شاء الله. هي دي آخر فقرة بإذن الله.
Okay, this is my final part, actually. So the opposition has committed many mistakes, most importantly, that they started with a strategy that focuses on the problems of the economy and the agony of the citizens using onions and the rise of the price of onions and something and other things. But President Erdogan managed to pull their leg into criticizing some of the important projects such as Bayraktar drones, etc. So had the opposition committed and continued to observe its strategy in focusing on the flows of economy and offered some alternatives and some genuine strategies on the ground rather than just promises, they would have better performed in their popularity with citizens. But 10 days into their campaigns, they started to criticize car, Bayraktar drones, etc. and the real projects. And what was worse was their strategy in the second round or after the first round, because they started to criticize a lot. While over 3 months, the President Erdogan has already established the national identity of his campaign. And when the opposition started to say that we are going to preserve our identity by getting rid of the refugees and of the Syrians. This was a fatal mistake, in addition to another mistake, which is offering more promises, while the problem was not offering more promises, but to convince the voters that you have the ability to actually see through those promises in the first place. So they had made a mistake in their alliances and their tendency to go into criticizing some tangible, important projects by President Erdogan, in addition to choosing the wrong candidate, and also that they did not focus enough on parliamentary elections. This is, in general, what I believe was the success, the source of success for the President Erdogan and his alliance, and led to the failure of Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu and his alliance in the opposition. I would keep it here, and I would like to hear from you and from Dr. Yasin as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mourad. You gave a very comprehensive breakdown of the different shortcomings of the opposition's campaign and the advantages that the AK Party, and specifically Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, had as an incumbent candidate. Next, I will ask Dr. Yasin Aktay if he is available. Dr. Aktay, are you available?
Yes, I am available now.
Okay, I see your video. I'm on the English channel, so I'm not really sure if the audio is clear. I would imagine that it is clear.
Is it clear? The vision is clear?
I introduced you at the beginning of our session, but Dr. Aktay, as a point of reminder, is a professor in Ankara. Dr. Aktay, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes for your opening comments. Please proceed.
I'd like to choose the language. Is it a right channel? I am in English or in Arabic?
Dr. Aktay, are you on the English channel or are you on the Arabic channel? Will you be giving your comments in Arabic? I can't, because I'm not able to hear your translation nor your voice.
Okay. I can go in English or in Arabic. But I try to choose the channel, the proper channel. Am I in the English or I couldn't find the place to shift the channel.
Oh, okay. Now, can you say that again?
He cannot find the channel, the right channel. So I think they need to probably work with him. Maybe you can make him the last speaker.
Okay, Dr. Aktay, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Al-Arian until you figure out. Our staff will get with you to instruct you on how to switch the channel. In the meantime,
I am in the main channel. Now I am in the main channel. I am shifting to the English.
Will you be giving your comments in English?
Okay. If you want, I can go in Arabic.
It's up to you. If you would like to give your comments in Arabic, you can go to the Arabic channel. If you would like to give your comments in English, you can be on the English channel.
Okay, then I will go in Arabic also. No.
Okay.
Okay, I am in the Arabic now.
Please proceed.
Okay, I'm in the Arabic. Okay. أهلا وسهلا.
Welcome.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم.
تسمعوني؟
Do you hear me?
فقط على القناة العادية. أنت تريد أن تذهب إلى القناة العادية.
Yes, we hear you.
We hear you on the floor, on the main floor. So if you need to go to the Arabic channel and the mute original audio.
روح عربي and then mute original audio.
Okay. كما الآن؟ جيد؟
تمام.
Does it work now?
نبدأ ما؟
Okay, I will start.
Go ahead.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I would like to say peace be upon you all. And I would like to salute and congratulate our people for this great victory in these elections that were monitored not only by the Muslim world, but by the entire world. And we have seen in the inauguration of Erdogan, we have seen people celebrating from Venezuela and from different parts of the world, especially by some key figures in the world. They were showing, we lost the speaker. His screen has frozen.
Yes, his screen is frozen for me too.
He's back.
هل في شيء؟ في مشكلة؟
Is there any problem?
We can hear you. تفضل.
يعني الرئيس أردوغان كان يشير إلى دائما هو يركز على
President Erdogan has always was focusing and speaking out on criticizing the world order, and that the world is bigger than five, and it's not fair to have five countries deciding and vetoing any decision in the world, and that the world is being divided according to those five, according to their whims, and they're under their control. And we have seen that the entire world was celebrating, or a lot of people in the world were celebrating the victory of Erdogan in the streets, from Europe to Africa to Latin America and Central Asia and Far Asia. We have seen how some people were in the streets celebrating. Turkey now is larger than Turkey, such as Erdogan was saying that the world is bigger than five. Now Turkey is bigger than Turkey, actually. It goes beyond the borders of Turkey. And it seems that Erdogan represents or a very symbolic, very respectful symbol in the world. In addition to that, 50 heads of states and heads of governments were present in the inauguration of Erdogan in the celebration. This also gives another meaning for the symbol that Erdogan represents today in the counterweight that he plays in the world order. We have seen now a figure that the Islamic world has been aspiring to see for 100 years. Of course, we're not saying that Erdogan represents the position of the caliph of the Muslim world, but the hearts of the people in the Muslim world and in the Arab world are with Anatolia and with the Anadolu people and presidency. Now, let me go back to the conditions or circumstances of the elections and the conditions afterwards or after the fact. In some of the circumstances that were in place after the earthquake actually has given Erdogan an opportunity in these elections. People who are in presidency or in power after 60 million Turkish, which is a quarter the Turkish population. So that was an opportunity for anybody in power to postpone the elections. So if he wanted to postpone the elections for a year or 2 years, maybe nobody would have been able to say anything against him. But Erdogan managed to meet the needs and made the promises to meet the needs of people after the elections, and he didn't say anything about postponing. And actually he said that the elections will be held or conducted in its time, and actually it's not the original time. It is it was even made earlier than the time that was originally supposed to be held. The law that, or actually holding the elections in an earlier date, required a decree or a law, and the law was passed in order to conduct that, and it happened in the time that was decided upon. So the election, the earthquake, sorry, didn't affect the popularity of Erdogan. There was a lot of opposition in the streets, and there were a lot of criticism against Erdogan. And added to that, the catastrophe of the earthquake took place. So I was wondering how Erdogan is going to manage or address all of that. So when I saw that Erdogan decided that the elections will happen on the time decided, and I made visits to the cities, and I have monitored what was going on social media. We have seen a lot of criticism to Erdogan's government, the AK Party government. But what we have seen in reality was completely different from what we read in the social media. Social media, it is a fake world, a world that is completely different from reality. And I believe Erdogan was able to see that difference. So people who were on the ground and who managed to see the real people, they found the reality, which was completely different from what you read on social media. So I can say that social media does not reflect the reality, and it is full of crap and a lot of fake things that we don't know from what sewage they were coming. So they put a lot of pressure on social media, trying to create this bubble that supports the critiques of Erdogan, and it was closed. It was a closed world upon those opponents of Erdogan, and they believe themselves that they have popularity, and those opposing Erdogan had a lot of weight on the ground. At the time, Erdogan was going to the populations in the affected areas by the earthquake, and he was able to meet with people and talk to them. And people there said that the only one who can save us or rescue us and meet our needs is Erdogan. So people heard that, those voices, but the opposition didn't. The opposition thought that they were on the rise, and that Erdogan was afflicted by this earthquake and he will lose. So I believe that this, and they thought that the cities that were affected by the earthquake will be on their side, and they thought that they had other proponents with them because of the earthquake. Of course, despite our sadness for what happened to those, we saw how Erdogan went with them, cried with them, paid visits to them, read the Quran with them, and walked in the funeral of the lost people there. And we, the people who were, he showed the people that we are among the real people who are affected by the earthquake. So this.
Excuse me, Dr. Yasin, you have 5 more minutes. I just wanted to let you know.
So the opposition actually had very high hopes in these elections, and they thought that they will win these elections. However, they miscalculated their power and miscalculated the power of Erdogan and the alliance that they made with the HDP. It would have had its impact amongst the nationalists and the nationalist church, and it was supposed to bring the voices of the nationalist people in Turkey who make themselves or believe themselves belong to the Ataturk or the CHP, the party of Ataturk, Kemal Ataturk. The polls at the time were pointing to the loss of Erdogan and the victory of the opposition. However, I wrote an article that we had a very well-known story where says, "Tell me," the one who spoke to the mirror, asking the mirror, "Tell me, is there any woman beautiful, more beautiful than myself?" So the opposition was playing that role actually. So they were seeking those polls in order to reflect their wishful thinking rather than the real voices in the streets. So they wanted to hear from those polls what they wanted to hear rather than the reality on the ground. And I am a sociologist, and so I know how the opinion polls, in order to be more objective, how they should be conducted, and how we should not be, we should not reflect our own wishes and our whims in these polls in order to be more objective and to get the real sense from those polls. However, the opposition used these polls as part of their propaganda in order to boost their morals. But however, it was negatively impacted them. Because some people who were hesitant to support Erdogan, actually they felt afraid if that result of the polls were correct, and they joined and they changed their minds and they supported Erdogan again. I was afraid that the second round would be a referendum on the refugees, because maybe those who voted for Sinan Ogan instead of Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, Sinan Ogan was focusing on. We lost the speaker again.
وعن طريقه يعني جالس حقوق الانسان، حقوق اللاجئين العالمي. هذا عندما تمت الجوله الاولى.
So when the first round ended, people wanted to get those who voted to Sinan Ogan. The first thing that comes to the mind is that Sinan Ogan was against the refugees, and those who voted for that, they wanted to be attracted on the same lines. However, this is one of the drama of the democracy. So when you look for the votes of the minority, and even if that minority were extremists,
if you could conclude your comments, we will pick up more of the details in the question and answers.
وأريد أن أرفضها تماما، ولكن رأينا جهبة أرادت أن تحصل على أصواتهم.
So we have seen that CHP wanted to get the votes of those who voted to Sinan Ogan and Erdogan and the AK party or actually the Republic or the People's Alliance said also that they want to get to those votes, so they wanted to reassure the racists. However, we have seen how the JHP and the party of Kılıçdaroğlu, they are they were in complete agreement with the People's Democratic party, and he was on the table with those with Omid Özdağ, who hates the Kurds. He hates he hates all people. Actually, he is very extremist racist. However, when Erdogan was asked about the refugees at that point, and I would like to thank Erdogan for his sincerity. Although he needed the votes for the who voted against him, he said, "No, we are not going to expel the Syrians and those who were victims and came to seek refuge in Turkey, fleeing the war and the killing and the violations against the human rights. We are going to be their supporters." At that point, that was very critical for him, and it shows the sincerity of any politician. Sometimes politicians get into such a trap, and that was a trap, and that was an exam or a test for Erdogan. So the second round was testing people's sincerity and their ability to go beyond this confrontation against the refugees. And Erdogan was committed or adhered to his position to the side of the refugees, and Allah stood to his side. So those extremists and the racists went to vote for the JHP, but it didn't work with them. And we see in all of the world, the leftist, the communist parties, usually they defend the rights of refugees. But in Turkey, actually, they were more representing a kind of fascism and racism against refugees. And that was the dilemma of the leftist opposition parties in Turkey. I believe this election, of course, it showed that there is polarization in Turkey, and we have a lot of people who hate Erdogan. However, Erdogan still have popularity. Of course, the hatred against Erdogan is not new. Part of those people, even when he didn't have the policy towards the refugees in Turkey, there were people against Erdogan. When he won the first elections, he won by there was 45% of people against him. And today, we still have the same 45% against him, regardless of his policies. So he didn't seek to increase his popularity in a way that defeats or undermine his morals and his ethics, or in a way that betrays his ethics. And we see in different elections around the world, for example, in a certain country that I don't want to name it, which is the state of the Zionists, they have within the elections they have a lot of problems and a lot of polarization. In France, for example, and even in the UK, governments do not get established easily after the elections takes place. However, in Turkey, after the elections, one day or a few days after the elections, the government was established, and that comforted people in a very good way. That is one of the aspects of the policy of Erdogan. So he selected some people to give or to reassure the world and to give trust to the world. So instead of dividing the positions amongst people, he tried to select people or the appropriate people to run those positions in the appropriate way. So that's how he selected those people. Each one of them has their own, has his or her own experience and their own past experience in running and in governance and in running public offices. So, for example, Jawdat Yilmaz, nobody expected that he will be appointed or selected as a vice president. When people heard so, they said this is the first person to be in this position. Or Hakan Fidan, for example, when when they hear that he was appointed as a foreign minister, people said that this is the best place for this man, or any other ministries or any other position. So what I mean in brief, that people were selected appropriately to fill the positions. And even Mohammad Chekchak, although he has differences with Erdogan. Erdogan knows that he has differences with Mohammad Chekchak, but he opened a space for consultation and discussion, for consultation about the economic policy. The economic policy is not an objective science, but it's also part of a policy. It has a scientific aspect, but also it has a political aspect, actually. So those political and scientific aspects are combined in the same government. So Mohammad Chekchak has differences with Erdogan in terms of the interest rate, or the interests in general in the banks, and the monetary policy, and the inflation.
Dr. Yasin, I apologize, but could you please wrap up your comments so we could
اوكي انا الان اقدم كلامي يعني رغم ان اردوغان يختلف مع محمد شيشك في
what I mean is that there is a difference between Erdogan and Mohammad Chekchak in the economics, and Erdogan focuses that the relation between inflation and interest, and that the solution for inflation is not to increase the interests. For 4 or 3 years now, he has been applying this policy, but the inflation is still around 40%. And now, after Mohammad Chekchak is in the in the Ministry of Economy, he is going to apply policy that will show how different things will go. In addition to that, if, for example, Kılıçdaroğlu will come to power, they are going to divide the positions, the ministries, among the different parties and the different people around the table, as if it is a cake and each one is going to take a piece. But for Erdogan, Erdogan is not dividing those positions as the loots of war, but he is putting the appropriate person on in the appropriate position, because this responsibility comes with accountability. The nationalist movement and other parties, or actually Erdogan didn't focus in dividing the positions to give shares to the parties within his alliance. He was looking for or he divided those positions based on the merits of the people who took the positions. And this is part of the technocracy that he followed, or that was pursued by the AK party. The majority were from the AK party, and none of the other parties who were in the alliance with Erdogan objected to those choices. It was received well by the people and by the members in the alliance who were in alliance with the AK party. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I'm sorry that I took longer than the time allocated for me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yasin Aktay. My apologies for rudely interrupting you. It's just for the sake of time. I was trying to keep track of the different speakers. Next, we have Dr. Sami Al-Arian, who needs no introduction. So to be brief, Dr. Arian is the director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. Previously, he has taught for more than 2 decades in the United States at the University of South Florida. He himself is published in a number of different journals, newspapers, and has published himself a number of manuscripts. He specializes in American foreign policy, the Middle East, and Palestinian politics. His latest book, he edited a book called The Quest for Democracy, examining civil-military relations in Muslim societies. Dr. Sami Al-Arian, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Awais. And I want to thank also my co-panelists for their presentations. I'll try to be brief, and I would focus on Turkish foreign policy and the impact of these elections on Turkish foreign policy. After the end of World War II, of course, the whole world entered into a new phase in which the United States and the Soviet Union were basically rivals to each other in a Cold War that ended in 1991. During that time, the United States worked very hard to bring Turkey to its orbit. And of course, that was successful policy, particularly when Turkey became part of NATO, along with Greece in 1952. And it remained as such, basically a side player to the grand strategy of the United States, which was to check the Soviet Union, contain the Soviet Union, build alliances in Europe around the Soviet Union in order to make sure it does not expand. That policy, of course, changed right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And as I said, in 1991, we entered in what could be described as the unipolar moment, when the two poles were no longer two, when the Soviet Union collapsed. What we have today certainly is a different world than the world in which Turkey was simply one of the allies of the United States in its containment policy towards the Soviet Union. In the subsequent years, after 1991, Turkey tried to expand its influence in the region, particularly in the Caucasus, in what is called the Turkic world. And what happened a decade after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the AK party won the elections of 2002, we entered a new phase in Turkey, in Turkish quest towards being a powerful country in its own region. So what I would like to examine is, since that time, the past 20 years, as the AK party became the dominant ruling party in Turkey, winning successive elections, being able to again succeed in presenting its view, its vision to the Turkish people, and win again another election a few weeks ago. So my presentation will focus on the grand strategy of Turkey versus the grand strategies of those who are trying to either rival Turkey in its own region, or great powers as they see the role of Turkey in the region and across the world. Since the ascendance of the AK party to power, it was clear that what Turkey was trying to do is to consolidate its position in one of the most strategic areas or geographies in the world. We are talking about the cross section, the world where three continents meet: Asia, Europe, and Africa, because Turkey also has a lot of influence since its time, and also as the successor of the Ottoman Empire, with its relationship to the Arab world, and of course many of these territories were in North Africa and beyond. So Turkey does have historical relations with these countries, with these societies, and also being one of the major Muslim countries in the world. During the time before the AK party, Turkey did not stress its cultural heritage or its historical dominance of that part, but certainly the AK party tried to present itself as someone who is concerned about Muslim societies, about Arab countries, and also Muslims across the world, not only in Muslim majority countries, but even beyond that. The West has taken a wait and see attitude because, as I said, historically speaking, and I'm talking about after World War II, they were looking at Turkey as being a country that is firmly in the Western orbit. But since the ascendance of the AK party, they see that there is more of an independent foreign policy. It seemed like the grand strategy of Turkey for the past 20 years is to make Turkey a strong country in its region, trying to also limit the power, whether it is international powers or regional powers, to become a regional hegemon. In other words, Turkey's firm grand strategy is, as much as possible, to not allow any foreign troops, particularly from great powers, either across from its borders or somehow in a threatening posture towards its national interests. And when we look at who would that be, I mean, who are the great powers that could actually threaten Turkey? Of course, there is a long history of Russian, Turkish, or Ottoman at the time skirmishes and battles and wars. But of course, that was appended by the Soviet Union later. And then we see today that what the policy is of Russia towards Turkey was one of also trying to get Turkey to side, particularly in the years since Putin rose to power, which is pretty much the time where Erdogan also came to power, is that this relationship was tense, but in recent years they have come closer for a particular reason, which I will explain shortly. I also want to emphasize that there are two main concerns, two main imperatives for Turkey in its quest to become a regional power. The first one, and they, particularly the AK party, have stressed that their policy is that you can't become a powerful nation without a powerful economy. So for the past 10 or 12 years of his rule, the AK party focused, laser focused on making Turkey one of the most growing economies in the world. We could see, for example, that the Turkish GDP rose from $60 billion around the time the AK party took over to this year approximately $800 or $905 billion. That's almost 3.7 times in about 2 decades. That's a huge, compared, of course, to other economies, growth when compared to the rest of the world. We could see, for example, their emphasis on exports and imports. For example, you could see that the imports this year, also they rose almost tenfold. When we look at the exports versus imports this year, they're almost matching now, around $290, $291 billion. And when you also look particularly at the defense industries and how the AK party started a very aggressive program towards making Turkey not only independent and powerful in its defense industries, but also even a net exporter. Turkey in 2002 exported about $250 million worth of armaments, which was small armaments, versus today about $4.4 billion of advanced defense equipment. Of course, that's almost 20 times of what it was 20 years ago. So this kind of policies that Turkey has been pursuing, which is to become more powerful economically and militarily, certainly its hegemonic posture around the world to make sure that it will be the most important and powerful country in the world is not to allow any regional hegemon or any country to become more powerful than its neighbors. So they have this strategy of creating what they call balance of power, or other countries to check this rising power. And when you look at the neighbors of Turkey, you will find that Turkey has pretty much weak neighbors. I'm not going to go over them. There are a lot of them, Georgia, Armenia, Bulgaria, and so on and so forth, Syria. So the strategy of the United States for the past few years has been to play the ethnic card. So we have now across Turkish border, the southern border in northern Syria, the presence of American troops. At one point, there were 13 bases with thousands of people. Today, it's about 900 people in 3 bases. But the point is that they wanted to arm and empower the Syrian Kurds because of the potential. And these Syrian Kurds are pretty much in cahoots with the PKK, which one of the most potent organizations that has faced Turkish troops in the past 3 or 4 decades, where they are considered in Turkey as being a terrorist group, not only in Turkey, but also even in Europe and the United States. The point is that these same troops that the United States has named as terrorist troops have been trained, have been equipped over to the tune of 50,000 people with heavy equipment, given Syrian oil reserves in order to give them the power that will bring Turkey back from trying to extend its influence and power across the region or beyond, back into its own backyard, fearing that this could actually eventually torn Turkey apart. I don't have time to go over the implications of this, but it's pretty obvious what the United States game is, which is to make sure that Turkey would just try to stay in its own neighborhood, trying to keep its integrity, its territorial integrity together before this threat extends beyond and perhaps even break up Turkey. So that is one of the most important foreign policy. That's one of the most important foreign policy imperatives for Turkey, is to consider the impact of having a powerful army with the intent to break Turkey, the territorial integrity of Turkey. Another concern for Turkey is, again, if we look at the breakdown of the exports and imports, even though Turkey has this tremendous amount of exports, about 290 billion, when you look closely, you will find that a large portion of this is because of energy. Turkey is poor in energy, and because Turkey is poor in energy, its energy bill is extensive. It's over $80 billion when we consider oil, gas, and the other needs, coal, and so on and so forth. That's a lot of money, hard currency that Turkey has to come up with, considering also it has a debt of about $460 or $70 billion. So that means that Turkey has to look at sources of energy. And one of the sources of energy that has been discovered in recent times is what's called the East Mediterranean, oil gas reserves. But the problem is that even though Turkey has the largest coastal area across the Mediterranean, it has been prevented from taking its fair share because of the Lausanne Agreement and giving the majority of the little islands, uninhabited islands, to Greece. And Turkey has been trying to assert its presence and try to sign agreements with Libya. They're trying very hard to bring Egypt to this in order to get its fair share. While on the other hand, some of the regional powers led by Israel have their
Dr. Sami, I'll ask you to wrap up if it's possible.
Wow, I just started. All right, I'll try. All right, so
we'll be addressing a lot of the questions in the question and answer. There's a bunch of questions.
Very well. Okay, I just give points. So I'm trying to say here is that gas and energy is very important for Turkey. I'm not going to explain why, but you can tell. So its foreign policy then with these two imperatives. Turkey is trying to become more independent. They're trying to become more, to assert their power in the region, to get out of the shadow of great powers, to flex its muscle. And you cannot do that without being strong militarily and economically for sure, but also trying to become energy independent. And then you could see that, what is the grand strategy of Turkey versus US, Russia, China, EU. And with the EU, I was going to talk about Germany, France, and England, but also through the regional powers, which is its rivalry with Iran, and of course it's how it looks at Israel and its attempt to have an effective control and hegemony over the whole Middle East and Egypt and Saudi Arabia. I really wanted to talk about all these issues, but seems like time is running out. But suffice it to say that for each one of these relations, whether with great powers such as US, Russia, and China, or some in Europe, or the regional powers, Iran, Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, particularly, all of them are under these two main grand strategies or imperatives. One is Turkey wants to be as independent as possible, as powerful as possible, as influential as possible. And when I say that, I mean in all spheres, economically, militarily, and so on and so forth. And each one of these would be impacted. So when Turkey wants to buy defense industry, when it comes to air defense system, for example, I'm just giving this as an example, and I will wrap up. One of its conditions, what I need the technology. So France and the United States refused to give it to the technology, so she went to the Soviet Union, to Russia. And by having that S-400 from Russia, that meant there's an enmity between it and the United States. So she was cut out of the F-35 program, which is the most advanced aircraft, military aircraft. So it is retaliating by not allowing Sweden. So the United States now is reciprocating and said, okay, we'll give it the most advanced F-16. So you could see what kind of give and take between these two nations, that this is not the old Turkey where whatever the US dictates, they will accept. Now, the United States was hoping, along with many other countries, not Russia and not China, for the opposition to win, because they thought that they could get through the opposition and get the opposition back to be a pliant state. Now that has failed. They would have now to come to terms with a new Turkey that with Confidant and the team that Erdogan is assembling. I think it will be very difficult not to take Turkey seriously and try to deal with it in a way that I think over time Turkey will continue to assert its power and build its own relationships, whether with great powers or regional powers. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sami, for your comments. We have about 45 minutes left over for question and answer. So we have ample time to discuss a number of issues. So I really want to appreciate the fact that the participants and panelists kept their comments brief. I will begin by asking on the domestic front, Dr. Mourad and Dr. Yasin. One of the things that you duly noted was the fact that the opposition seemed ill-prepared. However, what perhaps was a golden moment, given the fact that the opposition may not have in the future even such a great conditions for victory. Not only were they united, but we had a struggling economy, a financial crisis, along that natural disaster, which was once in a century level, and the full support of European media and capitals. Given all of these conditions, how do you think that the opposition now, since the election has now gone in terms of the AKP, will at any moment reassess their strategy? The only resignation that we saw from the opposition was Demirtas from the HDP. But it seems like the other parties are moving along without any problems. Will we see the opposition stay aligned for the local elections? Number one, that's number one question. And number two, is there something else going on in the opposition, given the fact that such a poor performance would have dictated, I mean, if you're a political party, that there must be a major rethinking about the leadership. However, since that hasn't happened, how do we move forward here in the future? I mean, will these parties stay as they are, or will there be a major shift coming the local elections? So first, and then Dr. Yasin.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, undoubtedly, the Turkish opposition is in such a predicament, as you mentioned, and it is a must that they establish or start radical changes. And President Erdogan hinted at that, and I have tweeted that as well, which is one of the challenges in the coming period of time in Turkey, a change in the political landscape, including the opposition, is a must, because the presence of opposition is necessary for a strong Turkey. And unfortunately, and it is in the best interest of Turkey for the opposition to be stronger. There are some indications that the opposition, particularly the younger generation, are starting to review and reconsider. But the fear is that this is going to be just a rivalry between the figures, between Kılıçdaroğlu and İmamoğlu, or something like that. But the actual overhaul that is needed is an overhaul in their ideology and in their propositions. They need to reassess what are the alternatives, what solutions they are offering. They were only seeking to, and that's one of the strengths of President Erdogan, which is they had a clear program, a clear schemes, clear strategies and visions on different aspects, while the opposition had none. And that's a big challenge. Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic that they will be able to reformulate and realign their lines internally for the local elections, unlike the AK party, which I believe is going to be able to make use of this gap with the opposition. But I hope that the opposition would reformulate itself, and some new parties and new figures would come along, such as Muharrem İnce and Sinan Oğan and other mature figures who have emerged during those elections. And I hope that those people with more informed ideas would come to the front lines for a better Turkey.
all of his comments and his contributions with Dr. Mourad about.
I can't hear Dr. Yasin's comments. Dr. Yasin?
Yes. Can you hear me?
He needs to be in the English channel if he's going to speak in English.
Dr. Yasin, you need to be on the English channel.
Okay. I go on in English. I agree with Brother Mourad on Dr. Mourad on whatever he said on the opposition and his comparison with the opposition and the ruling party, AK Party, and the alliance of popular alliance, Republican alliance, let me say, the Erdogan's alliance. And of course, in that part, in the Erdogan's part, there was a vision. There was some, not more than vision, the inauguration of some many projects during the electoral campaign. You could see in every day, in every meeting and popular meeting in all the cities where we were witnessing some very big projects. I mean, opening the railways and fast railways from Sivas to Istanbul, from Istanbul to from within Istanbul, and some, for example, the organization of the gas, distribution of the gas to all the people, and many. More than 50 projects, big projects, were introduced to the Turkish people by the government. That was in terms of the service, in terms of the industry, development in industry, and also the Justice and Development Party had very active vision about democratization of Turkey, and also it has a background also, of course, in democratization, and also, for example, handling the issue of Alevism, handling the issue of Kurdish people. Erdogan, what Erdogan did had achieved in terms of introducing many services and many reforms on Kurdish issue, on Alevi issue, on minorities issue in Turkey. It was a sort of silent revolution. It was named, but this way, and a book has been titled in this way as "Silent Revolution of Turkey," which was made by Erdogan in this issue. And also this project was also reproduced and was re-articulated during this electoral campaign. And we saw this was very what we saw in the opposition part, in the opposition alliance, was not but a sort of to revolt against Erdogan or to change Erdogan. Change, but what after change? There was nothing. There was nothing being introduced to the people after Erdogan. What will be after Erdogan, or changing Erdogan, or getting rid of Erdogan was the main target, and was enough, and was more than enough for many people. Of course, they tried to target and they tried to address just that expectation of popular voters, and of course this was not sufficient, and this was a sort of poverty of the opposition, poverty of vision in the part of opposition, and this was very obvious during this. Of course, this defeat in the part of opposition, they had much more expectation. The expectation was raised among the opponents, and people had. It was like dream to get him again for the next 5 years, etc. But that was it. I mean, that was not more than this. I mean, the vision of opposition, and now we came to another stage. And after every defeat in such democratical processes or stages requires its own changes, its own tensions, and its own earthquake. It is a sort of earthquake that happened within the opposition now, and now we see. Of course, we didn't witness any resignation from the part of opposition, but except Selahattin Demirtaş's resignation, but I think within Republican Popular Party, CHP, we saw the resignation of all highest members of the community of the ruling community of the party. We saw this, except Kılıçdaroğlu himself. He received all the resignations of all the members of the highest committee of the party, executive committee of the party, and that was, of course, what we saw in the assembly, inauguration, or in the oath, ceremony in the assembly when Erdogan entered to the hall, and Kılıçdaroğlu has protested him not standing up, for example. That was a sort of not to accept, not acknowledging the result, the consequences or the results of the revolution, even though Kılıçdaroğlu and the main opposition has been criticizing Erdogan for not being democratic and for being despotic, for being dictator, etc. Dictatorship is not something like this, of course. Erdogan went the election for 2 tours. Just 2 weeks ago, between the 2 tours, one from I think in Newsweek. One Syrian author has wrote an article saying that no dictator is waiting for or is expecting or is wondering about the results of the elections, and the dictators don't do that like this. They don't go to the elections by this way. The usual results we are witnessing, and we are very affiliated with, or we are accustomed in the elections is 99% in the dictatorship. It's not like this, for example.
Yeah.
You cannot win in the. Of course, we don't expect any. We expect earthquake, and after earthquake, some destroying and some very big changes will happen in the opposition part, and this also will have an impact on the local elections also. Of course, I don't say. Of course, I am not to say in the local elections there will be no opposition. Of course, the opposition will stay, and they liked this way of uniting against Erdogan or against, and they will try to repeat this victory, which is the only one that they witnessed during 21 years in Erdogan's ruling period. That is, the winning of Istanbul and Ankara mayorship. And I think they will try to repeat this victory in the same way by trying to unite. But to be united, it will not be that much easy as easy as 4 years ago.
Thank you so much. Sticking with the domestic issues, one last question, which was of concern to most observers, especially Muslim observers, was the growing share of nationalist voters and the alliance with the AKP, MHP, and also Sinan Oğlan's alliance with AKP in the final round. Also the tone of the election vis-a-vis the Syrian refugees in Turkey became very hostile and toxic. Even yourself at one time, you spoke about Türkleşmek, trying to make the Syrians Turkish. All of this created a very bad memories of, the past when the government tried to annihilate the identities of different communities, minorities in Turkey. How do you see the election from that viewpoint, from the viewpoint of those who are the different minorities in Turkey, different cultures, ethnicities? Are we going to see a further nationalistic, maybe even fascist future? with the new alliance that's in government, or do you see more tolerance in the future?
I think such fascist movements or tendencies in Turkey has been encouraged and has been fed by electoral campaigns. I mean, the electoral campaigns are feeding such discourses, and people are trying to get to apply. Especially some politicians are trying to apply very cheap, simple ways of unhumanistic, of course, ways for getting the votes of the people, and they try to address their own in a very populistic way, and that is which is raising the fascist emotions in Turkey, and it works as a sort of propaganda against the refugees in Turkey. But otherwise, in Turkey we didn't witness such a fascist movement, and don't think that this is a very popular. And of course, there is sort of upset people. Popularly are being upset because of the economy. If the economy is good, nobody is caring about the refugees or any other people. Just on the contrary, the majority of people are thinking. Look at the votes received by Erdogan. 52.2% of the votes has been I mean approving the existence of the refugees in Turkey also, because Erdogan is very obviously and insistingly has repeated his position towards the refugees, and he said they are our brothers, and we cannot do anything against them that will violate human rights or refugee rights or brotherhood rights. I mean, they are all brothers, and he talks them as brothers. And I think Erdogan's popularity, in as much as he is successful in the government, of course, in economy, in managing the economy, the unemployment, of course, if the unemployment is getting more lower level, I think nobody will care about the refugees. Just on the contrary, I think there will be some policies towards integration of the Syrian people. To be realistic, I am realistic. I am not, of course, welcoming all the refugees in Turkey. To be realistic, it is not good for any country to receive some uncontrollable refugees to their country, especially not to talk about the asylum from some human issues, for example, from war or from some political unacceptable human rights violations taking place in some places, and somebody has to have to come to Turkey. I don't talk about this, but some people who are seeking for good, better lives, etc., from Afghanistan or some. This, of course, should be taken under control, but of course, anyway, in a humanistic way. Of course, I think the issue of refugees now in all the world, especially in all political scenes, is the way which is distinguished between some humanist policies or universalist policies, or some even left-wing policies, socialist policies, from the fascist, from the unhumanistic policies. I think this issue now is the examination of all the parties. And now I think, and I am very proud of my party, and I am very proud of, as Islamists, for example, Muslim people are more refugee friends, because not to encourage people to shelter Turkey or to your country, but when they come, they are your examination, and the way you are treating them is your examination as party, as group, as individual, and as a country, of course. And Turkey, under the leadership of Erdogan, was the best of the world. I think I can say, and I can be proud of this policy on the name of Erdogan, on the name of my country, and on the name of my Islamist policies.
Dr. Yasin, thank you for your comments. I want to shift the discussion a little bit towards foreign policy. In fact, but before I raise that question, the issue of refugees, which is not really a Turkish issue at all. I mean, it is an issue of those who have created the conditions of refugees. We saw the number of refugees go from 30 million 20 years ago to now more than 108 million displaced people in the world, of which 30 million now are just refugees. So that's almost, more than 3 times the amount of refugees in the world due to natural disasters, due to economic conditions, and then wars. And not to mention the fact that the main cause of this human trafficking is, the desire for many people to go to Europe. So I don't understand where this questioning of the Turkish government is coming from when the structures are way beyond the controllability of Turkey itself. I mean, who caused the wars in the Middle East? Who caused the displacements? Who is the cause of the great inequality in the world that is leading people to sacrifice their lives to go all the way across? And who is doing the human trafficking? These are known gangs and mafias that are moving people across borders. So anyways, I do appreciate your comments on that issue. I would have liked to see more from the AK Party in distinguishing themselves in terms of the rhetoric around this issue. However, in the last few weeks of the election, a very fascist and nationalistic rhetoric was in play. Hopefully in the election coming forward, it will be different. On the issue of foreign policy, how do we see the implications of this election in terms of the multipolar world? We saw, for instance, that most of the global south and also some of the BRICS countries supported the candidacy of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But as we know, traditionally, Turkey is a Western power as well. How will Turkey manage the upcoming tensions in a bipolar world? Will Turkey, for instance, support the BRICS countries and the global south, including Russia and China? Or will it become closer to Europe in trying to mend ties with ties that have been strained after the Arab Spring? Dr. Sami, I'll give the floor to you, and then if Dr. Yasin or Dr. Mourad want to jump in, the floor is free.
Thank you very much. It's a very important question, and I think what Turkey will try to do is to juggle between both worlds. I would not put Russia and China in the global south, but certainly the world is coming into, I think, in the next 10 years, into 2 different worlds. We're going to have the world centered around America and a world most probably centered around China. Russia is a great power, but it's the weakest among the 3 great powers. And therefore, it would probably most likely, after the Ukraine crisis, it would ally itself with China than with the other world. Now, Turkey will try to manipulate or try to place itself to play a constructive role in both, and I think it will find it increasingly difficult to do that, particularly if the United States puts it in a way that they have to choose. And I think the United States has told certain countries that they have to choose. The one country that the United States has not been able to actually placate is India, which is part of the BRICS. I think Turkey will try to join the BRICS. I believe Russia would support that. I think China is reluctant, particularly because of the Turkish position towards the Uyghurs, but also because of other things. I think it will have to see more of Turkey to allow it to become that part of that. But generally speaking, a multipolar world is better for medium powers, is better for Turkey, is better for the rest of the world. You could see, for example, in the Ukrainian crisis, over 140 countries have refused. We don't hear about that much in the Western media. 140 countries refused to join the US sanctions against Russia. So that's significant. You know, that's almost all of Africa. 45 out of 48 nations in Asia, with the exception of Singapore, Japan, and South Korea. All these countries refuse to have sanctions against Russia, and all of Latin America. So if the rest of the world are not part of that US-centered world, that means we are going to have a very interesting times in the future. But of course, that is contingent upon China actually building that second order, that China-centered order. I'm not sure that China has decided to do that, or to do it at a pace where the rest of the world could join, because again of the interdependence of the Chinese economy with the Western economy. I think it's all going to depend on how the US is going to manage that relationship, and also to any developments vis-a-vis Taiwan. That is the most important issue for the Chinese. And I think they are determined to have a unity, in other words, to unite Taiwan with mainland China by 2049, which would be the centennial celebration of China, of its independence. And I think that means in the next 20-25 years, there will be very interesting developments around the world. Where does Turkey fit? As I said, Turkey would have difficult options because it is part and parcel of the NATO alliance, which is built around confronting Russia right now and any threats in Europe. Russia is trying to, again, have a much better relationship with Turkey. Turkey is pretty much open. So far, that relationship has not gone to the next level. It might, because now they are more dependent on each other in terms of energy, and also in terms of the political support that Erdogan is being given Putin when it came to the different deals, you know, the grain deals and things of that sort. So how the Ukraine crisis is going to end is going to be important. But keep in mind also that historically speaking, Russia was a menace, was a threat to Turkey. And even though this kind of rhetoric has totally diminished in recent years, we have to see, because part of, again, Turkish grand strategy is not to allow foreign troops near its borders. And Russian troops today are in Syria, they are in Azerbaijan, they are in different places where in Georgia. So that also, on the long run, could also pose a threat to Turkey. But generally speaking, a multipolar world is much, much better for Turkey.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask. We have a few minutes left, so I wanted to ask. This is supposedly supposed to be Erdogan's legacy term. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but it's highly unlikely that he will run again in 2028. I think it's going to be his last term.
Unless the constitution changes, that's true.
So are we going to expect something different from him, given the fact that this is a legacy term? Obviously, in elections, you know, legacy terms are usually different than terms that are up for re-election. Is there any priority differences from within the party, or that you analyze that he may want to tackle, which has been on his agenda? There are a lot of expectations from voters, obviously, given that he may not be up for re-election. Are there any such items that you observe as being something that we can expect in the coming 5 years? Dr. Mourad.
شكرا لسؤالك. ثانك يو فور question. شكرا لسؤالك على هذا السؤال. الحقيقه
Thank you for the question. We have indicators that tell us that President Erdogan is going to reformulate his policy and leave a legacy behind him. I believe that this will be his the legacy term, and he's going to leave that legacy. First of all, the core changes that made in the government, most of these changes in the government were positive. The second fact, the speech that he said that he wants to extend his hand to the opposition and how to develop a constitution that is up to the what is aspired, what is expected from Turkey in the new age. And I believe that there will be a huge societal dialogue to have a constitution that allows Turkey to take its role in the world. There will be a huge challenge in terms of bridging the gap in terms of polarization that we have in the society, and here we're talking about the ideological gap and how the new generations are built on the Turkish identity and how this identity is being identified. But there should be, or I believe that there should be development on basic rules and basic points for this identity in order to be identified, in order for the people to be more tolerant to the other from other ideologies. So I expect that more than 80% Erdogan is going to make this term a term of reformulation of the political scene, drafting a new constitution to Turkey, and restructuring the economy. I hope that selecting Mohammed Chishmek or Mr. Yilmaz, that they are going to not only solve the current problems, but also to restructure the Turkish economy so it can become more effective and more resilient in the face of the international fluctuation and the economic hits that it takes to make it more stronger or more solid and more resilient in the face of these challenges. That's why I thank Dr. Arian for saying that, or as he said, that it will play an independent role, but it's not going to play that independent role if it is relying on the financial flows from the West. If it wants to play a role in the world, an independent role, so it should be relying on itself rather than relying on the international financial institutions or Western international institutions. I hope that I answered your question.
Dr. Sami, Dr. Yasin. Dr. Sami, Dr. Yasin. Any comments about his?
Is Dr. Yasin here? Yeah, he can.
I am here, but I don't have any comment about this. Thank you.
Dr. Sami?
Okay. Dr. Yasin, you want to?
No, he said he doesn't have any comment.
Okay. All right. No problem. I didn't hear him. Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Very well. Well, I think the next 5 years are going to be the defining moments for the president of Turkey, because these are the decisions that he will make that will probably be more consequential than any other decisions that have been made so far. On domestic policy, I think how the societal conversation regarding the new constitution, that he made it as the centerpiece of how Turkey would be defined in next century, is going to be very important. I think the presidential system has just been consolidated after these elections. I don't think that's going to change. And I think now he's going to the next phase, which is building the so-called democratic institutions that could define how Turkey, not only how Turkey would be ruled, but also the role of Turkey in in its own neighborhood and beyond. On other domestic policies, I think, as Dr. Mourad mentioned correctly, the economy is going to be the centerpiece. And I think he has assembled an economic team that not only he has trust in, but I think many economists across Turkey are hoping that they can put an economic program that will not just be based on borrow and spend or borrow and build or construct, but it will be more a productive type economy. And I think in the last few months of the elections campaign, Erdogan himself has been touting, these high-tech products, the electric car, the nuclear reactors, the aircraft carriers, and so on and so forth. These type of projects that would be an added value projects rather than simply constructing huge buildings and things of that sort, or building highways and airports and bridges. On the issue of foreign policy, and I think Turkey now is in a position certainly to play much greater role in the region. I did hear some of the people, which I would not name, who are now in a very good position in making foreign policy decisions, talking about establishing an axis of major powers. This idea that Erbakan was advocating for a long time. There are major countries in the region, and if they come together on certain terms, they could actually change the politics of the region. How that's going to happen and whether or not it could happen, this is, of course, needs very skillful diplomatic and political relations in order to do that. But just thinking of, of course, there's a turmoil in Pakistan now. So Pakistan, actually, we're going to wait and see what happens there. But if you look at Malaysia, for example, and Indonesia, and going straight, and if you have more stability in the Arab world, and with this openings towards major countries in the region, even though we do not see any kind of political openings or democratic transitions or any of the sort, but Turkey is insistent to play a much greater role, and we will see how that role is going to be translated into actual either empowerment or prosperity. I think internationally speaking, my prediction is that Turkey will continue its independent path. It is very much aware of the fact that its trade and its strategic interests right now are aligned with many European countries, the European Union and the United States, but it will also try to chart a more independent foreign policy by opening more towards the other world, to Russia and China. It will try to go into BRICS. And I think that would be the legacy that Erdogan is trying to leave, is that Turkey will become not a regional hegemon, but because I don't think that is attainable, but it will become a regional power that will get respect and influence, not only within its own region, but also across the world. It could be a trusted power where the West would have a strong relationship with it, but not as a client or appliance state. And it will also have great relations with other great powers such as Russia and China. And we have seen that he is insistent always in his speeches when he says the world is bigger than five, is that Turkey would become another pillar, another world power that people could turn to. He always brings Turkey as being one of the major Muslim countries. So he's trying to always raise that part, whether that's going to translate into an actual policy or just rhetoric. I think he will try. He will try to bring it into more a political clout rather than just being rhetoric. What will be also interesting to see how he reacts in terms of legacy towards the issue of Jerusalem. He always brings Jerusalem as being one of the major issues that he cares about. We have seen lately how the right-wing fascist Israeli government is trying to consolidate more its sovereignty and its control over Jerusalem and the holy sites. He has been trying also to mend relations with them because of the energy need in the East Mediterranean. So these two issues will clash eventually, whether this year or the next, and then he would have to take a decision, and he would have to assert whether he is going to, where he's going to stand. And it will be very interesting to see, because that would also be one of the things I think he cares about when it comes to legacy. What was his position toward Jerusalem, whether he made a difference in terms of how that issue is impacting the whole Muslim world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sami. Before we close, I wanted to give Dr. Yasin and Dr. Mourad a chance to give their final comments regarding the implications, both globally and domestically, regarding the elections. What your predictions are about what we're going to see in the next 5 years. You have 1 or 2 minutes each if you would like to make some comments.
Sorry.
تفضل دكتور ياسين. Will you start, Dr. Yasin?
Dr. Yasin, go ahead, please.
I think in the last in the next 5 years.
Should I start? أبدأ أنا؟
هو بيتكلم بالإنجليزي.
Go ahead, Dr. Yasin. Go ahead, Dr. Yasin, we can hear you.
تفضل دكتور ياسين، تفضل.
بالعربي ما في أي قناة أنا
اللي يعجبك أنت، قل بس أي قناة تحب تتكلم.
يعني إن شاء الله في الانتخابات في أيام المقبل، في السنوات المقبل إن شاء الله.
So in the coming years, hopefully, I believe that Erdogan has a great opportunity. It's not only something that I'm saying, but it's something that the AK party believes in. And we have a new development these Turkish people can see, and the popularity of Turkey is growing now. Turkey is a dynamic country and it has a lot of energy. And I believe that the coming years we're going to see new policies. I believe Hakan Fidan in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will have a different policy, different from Çavuşoğlu. Çavuşoğlu was successful, undoubtedly, in running the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, he was following up on the or running the relations. I believe Hakan Fidan is going to have a wider vision in this ministry, and he's closer to the vision of Erdogan, I believe, and he's closer to Erdogan than Çavuşoğlu. So I believe that he's going to play a role in making better connections in relations in the region. And as Dr. Sami said, Turkey will have a new role to open relations between the Muslim world and Europe, and to represent itself to the United States. In the past, we used to see, or the scene was as if the United States controls our countries, controls the Muslim world, and it has hegemony over our countries. But right now, the Muslim world will have a better posture, and there will be. I'm not going to say Turkey will have a leading role, because the Arab countries and the Muslim countries sometimes get upset with this, but it's going to have a good role, a friendly role with other countries, and in order to avoid any bad positions or bad aspects that the Muslim world suffered from. Actually, Turkey doesn't want to control any other countries. We want to be servants to the Muslim world. The role of Turkey, as Erdogan expressed, he say that our aim is not to be in power, but to serve the people. And this is the same position we have towards the Muslim world. As we are serving our people, Turkey is going to serve the Muslim world. And this will be the hope for all of Muslims. And we are going to generate new opportunities with our economy, political positions, and relations with the world. In addition to that, I believe the presence of the people that were present in the inauguration of Erdogan shows, or it was an indication that we are getting into a new world. And some leaders were competing to be there in the inauguration. So I believe this is a new opportunity for Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to give Dr. Mourad, we've run out of time, but Dr. Mourad, if you have a quick comment or question
الحقيقة أنا متفق مع دكتور ياسين أن حفلة
I agree with Dr. Yasin that if we compare the inauguration of this inauguration with the inauguration in 2018, it was a great difference in the numbers of the people who attended, and the economic relations and the cooperation between Erdogan and the United Arab Emirates, where there are rumors that there will be 50 billion contracts and 50 billion US dollars between the Saudi Arabia and Turkey. In the first round, there was 49%, and in the second round, 52%. If we look at other countries, we see, or other democratic countries, we see large percentages. So I believe the Turkish people showed a very civilized image in the elections. There were no bad experiences. The opposition recognized or acknowledged their loss or their defeats. I believe all of that shows that Turkey is a democratic country and with institutions. There is respect of democracy. So I hope that Erdogan and his team will focus on reformulating the scene, and I hope that it will achieve its aims to have a better Muslim world. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much for all the participants and for our guests. I also want to thank the translators, Mr. Omar, and thank you for Taimur and the staff. I really appreciate your behind-the-scenes work. Without it, it would not be possible. Also, I want to thank Ms. Dana, everybody from CIGA. We are looking forward to our next seminar. We have it every couple of weeks, so please stay tuned. Once again, Dr. Yasin, Dr. Mourad, thank you for your participation.